"You're old and useless." The words hit me harder than the palm Ravi slammed against my dining table. The spoon in my hand trembled, spilling curry onto the worn tablecloth my late wife Priya had embroidered 30 years ago. My son's face was twisted with anger, his designer watch glinting under the single bulb hanging from our ceiling. I looked at Priya's photograph on the wall, her gentle smile frozen in time. She would have known what to say. I didn't. Instead, I folded my napkin slowly, stood up, and walked toward the door. "Papa, where are you going?" Ravi called after me, but his voice carried irritation, not concern. I stepped into the cool night air, letting the door close softly behind me. The sea breeze carried salt and memories. Tomorrow I would do what needed to be done. My name is Arun Menon, and I am 72 years old. For 50 years, I worked as a carpenter in this small coastal town of Alappuzha. My hands, now wrinkled and spotted with age, have built tables for weddings, cradles for newborns, and coffins for old friends. After Priya died 3 years ago, I thought about closing my workshop. But the neighbors kept coming with broken chairs, wobbly stools, cracked shelves. They couldn't afford new furniture, and I couldn't afford to stop being useful. Every morning, I swept the sawdust from my workshop floor and fed the 3 stray dogs that slept outside. The scent of teak wood and varnish filled my lungs like prayers. This workshop was where Ravi took his first steps, where he used to sit watching me work, asking endless questions. "Why do you measure twice, Papa?" he would ask. "Because cutting once is enough," I would answer. Those days felt like another lifetime now. Ravi arrived last month in his new car, a gleaming silver sedan that looked out of place on our narrow dirt road. He wore sunglasses even though the sun was setting, and his shirt probably cost more than I earned in 3 months. "Still wasting time here, Papa?" he said, stepping carefully around the wood shavings. He worked at a bank in Mumbai now, managing investments for wealthy clients. Everything about him screamed success except his eyes, which had forgotten how to see anything beyond money. I offered him tea in my chipped cup. "You should sell this shack and move to the city with me," he said, not looking at me. "Who would repair everyone's furniture then?" I asked gently. He laughed, a harsh sound. "Let them buy new things. That's how the world works now." 2 weeks before that terrible dinner, I spent an entire afternoon carving a wooden picture frame. Ravi had mentioned he was getting promoted to senior manager, and I wanted to give him something meaningful. I chose the best teakwood I had saved, carving tiny elephants along the border because he loved elephants as a child. My arthritic fingers cramped, but I worked through the pain. The frame was meant to hold his achievement certificate, something he could display in his fancy Mumbai office. That evening, I wrapped it carefully in old newspaper and waited. My phone buzzed at 6 o'clock. "Busy this weekend. Work emergency. Send your blessings from there, Papa." I stared at the message for a long time, then placed the wrapped frame on the shelf next to 3 other unopened gifts from previous occasions. The tea I had prepared grew cold. The next morning, I walked to the market to buy varnish for a customer's dining table. Outside the grocery store, I noticed a small boy, maybe 8 years old, barefoot and dirty. He was reaching for a loaf of bread when the shopkeeper shouted at him. The boy's hand froze. I stepped forward and paid for the bread, then bought 2 samosas from the vendor next door. We sat on the stone wall, and I gave him 1 samosa while I ate the other. "Thank you, Uncle Carpenter," he said, his eyes bright with tears and gratitude. I learned his name was Dinesh, and his mother cleaned houses while his father had left them 2 years ago. Something about his innocent smile reminded me why I kept working, kept building, kept helping. That afternoon, I added his name to a list I kept hidden in my workshop drawer. The villagers talked about me constantly. I heard them at the tea stall in the temple courtyard at the fish market. "Old Arun gives away too much," they said, shaking their heads. "He'll die with nothing." The textile shop owner told me directly one day, "Your son earns lakhs in the city, yet you patch broken stools for pocket change. Where's the pride in that?" I smiled at him while paying for thread. "Some repairs aren't measured in money," I said. He looked confused, but I didn't explain. How could I tell him that every chair I fixed, every table I restored, was my way of staying connected to Priya's memory? She always said, "Help when you can, Arun. Money comes and goes, but kindness stays in people's hearts." I carried her wisdom like a compass. Late that night, after the village fell silent except for the waves, I opened my hidden ledger. I kept it in a metal box beneath loose floorboards in my workshop. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, listing names and amounts. Kamala auntie, roof repair, 5,000 rupees. Dinesh's mother, school fees, 3,000. Fisherman Babu's surgery, 12,000. And then a separate section labeled Ravi's fund. This money, accumulated over decades, was meant to help others in my son's name. Every month I added whatever I could spare. My pension, the small amounts customers paid, the interest from a fixed deposit Priya had left. I added another 2,000 rupees to the fund and wrote the date. "For your future, my son," I whispered to the empty workshop. "When you're ready to understand." Ravi visited again 2 weeks ago, agitated and sharp-tongued. He wanted me to sell the workshop and the small plot of land it sat on. Developers were buying up coastal properties, he explained impatiently, and I could make good money. "This place is sentimental nonsense," he said, pacing. "You're sitting on prime real estate." I watched him measure my life's work with profit margins. "This land holds more than buildings," I said quietly. "It holds people's trust. When someone brings me their broken furniture, they're trusting me to make it whole again." His face flushed red with frustration. "You're being a stubborn old fool, Papa. The world has changed." He left without finishing his tea, his car kicking up dust clouds as he sped away. I stood at the door long after he disappeared. 3 days before our final argument, my phone buzzed with bank alerts. Transaction after transaction, money moving from our joint savings account. My hands shook as I read the amounts. Nearly everything was gone. I walked to the bank branch, my legs unsteady. The manager, a young woman named Kavita, looked uncomfortable as she explained. "Your son had full authorization, Mr. Menon. The account was joint. Legally, he could withdraw the funds." I stared at the paperwork showing Ravi's electronic signatures. He had taken it all, 40 years of savings, while I slept. 200,000 rupees gone in minutes. I should have felt rage, but I only felt hollow. I signed the papers Kavita placed before me, my signature shaky. "I need to make one last transaction," I told her. "It's time." Ravi's phone call came 5 days after that terrible dinner. I didn't answer. He called again, then sent texts. "What did you do? Half my money is gone." "Papa, answer your phone." I had already disconnected my mobile number and moved to a friend's house in the next village. Through the window, I watched the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. My friend Balakrishnan, another retired carpenter, asked no questions when I arrived with a small bag. "Stay as long as you need," he said simply. That evening, I drafted a letter to Ravi on plain paper, my handwriting careful and deliberate. "For the man you might one day become." I included a key and an address in Mumbai. Balakrishnan would deliver it to my empty house tomorrow. Let Ravi wonder. Let him search. Let him finally try to understand something beyond his reflection. Ravi stood in my empty workshop 3 days later, according to Balakrishnan, who watched from a distance. My son walked through every room, touching the furniture, opening drawers. On the dining table, he found my envelope sealed with red wax. Balakrishnan told me Ravi's hands trembled as he opened it, reading the brief message and examining the key. The address I provided was in Dharavi, Mumbai's sprawling neighborhood where dreams and desperation lived side by side. I imagined his confusion, his anger mixing with something that might finally be concern. The key was brass, small, attached to a wooden keychain I had carved years ago with both our initials intertwined. Would he remember? Would he recognize his own childhood handwriting on the back, where he once wrote, "Papa's helper"? I waited for Balakrishnan's next call. The address led Ravi to a narrow street in Dharavi where children played cricket with broken bats. Balakrishnan's nephew, who I had asked to observe, described everything to me over the phone. The building was modest, its walls painted cheerful yellow. A sign read, "Skilled Hands Workshop." Wooden shavings covered the entrance floor. Ravi hesitated before knocking. A middle-aged woman named Deepa, whom I had hired 6 months ago, opened the door. "Master Arun said you would come eventually," she told him. Behind her, the sound of sawing wood and children's laughter drifted through. Ravi asked where I was. "He left instructions," Deepa replied. "Said to show you the work first. Then you'd understand why he needed the money back." She stepped aside, letting him enter. I wished I could see his face. 20 children worked inside, ages ranging from 8 to 15. Some sanded wooden toys, others painted small furniture pieces. Every child wore an apron with their name embroidered on the pocket. A young girl approached Ravi shyly, holding a wooden elephant she had carved. "Master Arun taught us this," she said proudly. "He said elephants never forget their families." Ravi noticed something. Every toy, every piece of furniture had a small letter R carved into the bottom. His initial. Deepa explained, "Master Arun registered this workshop 6 months ago. Every child here has lost at least one parent. He's teaching them carpentry so they can earn dignified livelihoods." Ravi's throat tightened. He remembered the times his father tried teaching him woodwork, but he was always too impatient, too focused on his studies, too eager to leave this life behind. Deepa led Ravi to a small office where framed certificates hung on the walls. Partnership agreements, registration documents, donation receipts. One frame caught his attention. Arun and Son Initiative. The trust was registered 5 years ago, with both their names listed as founders. But Ravi had never signed anything. Deepa noticed his confusion. "Master Arun said you'd be surprised. The son wasn't you initially. It was his promise that every child we help becomes his son or daughter." She paused, looking sad. "But 3 weeks ago, he collapsed during a workshop session. The doctors said his heart was failing. He refused treatment, said the money had better purpose here." Ravi felt ice spread through his chest. "Where is he now?" he demanded. Deepa handed him another envelope. "He said to give you this after you saw the children." The envelope contained medical reports and financial statements. The joint account Ravi had emptied wasn't just family savings. It was the operational fund for the workshop. Arun had been slowly transferring his pension and earnings into it, building a sustainable program. When Ravi withdrew the money, it crippled everything. The second set of papers showed how Arun liquidated his fixed deposits, sold his wife's jewelry, even took a loan against the workshop property to restore the operational funds. But this time, he registered everything solely under Ravi's name. "You're now the legal owner," Deepa explained. "Master Arun removed himself completely from the records, said his son needed to learn responsibility by bearing it." Ravi collapsed into a chair, the papers scattered at his feet. "What have I done?" he whispered. Outside, children laughed while building a wooden bookshelf together. Ravi called every hospital in Mumbai and the surrounding districts. He called the police, filed missing person reports, searched homeless shelters and temples. For 2 weeks, he barely slept. His expensive apartment felt like a prison. His colleagues noticed his distraction. "Family emergency," he told them, taking indefinite leave. He visited the workshop daily, teaching the children simple banking concepts while trying to learn their names. Dinesh was there too, the boy from Alapuzha. "Your Uncle Carpenter's son?" Dinesh asked, eyes wide. "He talked about you every day, said you were brilliant but lost, said he was trying to help you find your way home." Ravi broke down then, surrounded by children who comforted him with small hands on his shoulders, offering him water and tissues, showing him more kindness than he had shown his own father. A fruit vendor near the workshop finally gave Ravi a clue. "The old carpenter left me something to give his son," the vendor said, pulling out a crumpled note from his pocket. Arun's handwriting, shaky but readable. "Find me where the waves are gentler." Ravi stared at the words, memories flooding back. Their family fishing spot, a quiet pier 2 hours south of Alapuzha. They used to go every Sunday when Ravi was young. catching small fish and watching the sunrise together. Priya would pack breakfast, and they would eat on the rocks while seabirds called overhead. Ravi hadn't been there in 20 years. He booked the next train south, clutching the wooden keychain his father had made. During the journey, he finally cried properly, his body shaking with the weight of his cruelty, his blindness, his wasted years. The pier was exactly as Ravi remembered. Wooden planks weathered by salt and time. Fishing boats dotted the horizon. And there, sitting on a familiar rock, was Arun. His father looked smaller somehow, his shoulders bent. He was mending a fishing net with careful, practiced movements. The sunrise painted everything gold. Ravi approached slowly, his feet heavy on the wooden planks. Arun looked up, showing no surprise. "You found your way, son," he said simply, his voice weak but peaceful. No accusation, no anger, just a father's quiet acknowledgement. Ravi fell to his knees beside him, words pouring out. "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm so sorry. I called you useless. I took your money. I abandoned you. I forgot everything you taught me." His tears fell on the fishing net, darkening the rope. Arun's weathered hand touched his head gently. "I'm dying, Ravi," Arun said quietly, still working on the net. "The doctors gave me 3 months. That was 2 months ago." Ravi's world stopped. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you fight this?" Arun smiled faintly. "I tried calling. You were always busy. Besides, I needed to finish something more important than my own life." He gestured to the sunrise. "Do you remember what I used to tell you here?" Ravi wiped his eyes, remembering. "You said the sea repairs itself every day. Every wave that crashes returns as foam and starts again." Arun nodded. "I needed you to understand that, son. Money, success, pride, they crash like waves. But what we build for others, that's what returns." He handed Ravi the small wooden hammer he had used for 50 years. "If you wish to repay me, mend something that cannot pay you back." They sat together as the sun climbed higher, father and son reunited by grief and understanding. Arun talked about Priya, about the workshop, about every child who reminded him of Ravi at that age, full of potential and searching for purpose. "I never wanted your money, son. I wanted your heart back." Ravi held his father's frail hand, feeling how thin it had become. "The workshop," Arun continued, "the trust, everything is yours now, but it only means something if you choose it freely, not from guilt." The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and flowers. Fishermen passed by, waving at Arun with affection. A small boy ran up with a wooden boat toy. "Master Arun, I finished it," he shouted. Arun's face lit up. Then, suddenly, his breathing changed. His eyes met Ravi's one last time, filled with love and forgiveness. "Build something that lasts," he whispered. The funeral happened 3 days later in Alappuzha. Hundreds attended. Ravi was shocked by the crowd. Fishermen, shopkeepers, housewives, students, children. They brought flowers and stories. "Your father repaired my son's wheelchair for free. He taught my daughter to read while fixing our shelves. He paid for my grandson's surgery anonymously." Story after story, each one revealing a father Ravi had stopped seeing years ago. The children from the workshop came in a chartered bus. All wearing matching shirts, they had screen-printed themselves with Arun's sketch on the front. They sang a song they had composed, their voices breaking with emotion. Dinesh placed a wooden elephant on the coffin. "For Master Arun, who never forgot us." Ravi understood finally what his father meant. This legacy of repaired hearts and taught hands was worth more than any bank balance. Ravi quit his banking job the following week. His colleagues thought he was insane, throwing away a lucrative career. He didn't care. He moved permanently to Dharavi, taking a small room near the workshop. The space officially became Arun's hands, with a new sign painted by the children. Ravi spent his days learning properly what his father had tried teaching him decades ago. How to measure with grain, how to hold a chisel, how to sand until the surface felt like water. His hands blistered, then calloused. His expensive watches stayed in a drawer. He wore his father's old work shirts, now loose on his frame. The children called him Ravi, sir, but corrected his techniques with gentle patience. Master Arun did it this way, they would say, showing him. Slowly, painfully, Ravi was being rebuilt. 6 months after Arun's death, while repairing an old cupboard, Ravi discovered something inside the wooden hammer his father had given him. The handle unscrewed, revealing a hollow chamber. Inside was a tiny rolled paper, yellowed with age. His hands shook as he unrolled it. His father's handwriting, written years ago. My dear Ravi, if you're reading this, you've finally picked up the tools I left behind. Remember, pride breaks faster than wood. But love can be repaired endlessly. Every crack makes the joint stronger if done right. I was never disappointed in your success, son. I was only sad you thought success meant leaving everything behind. Build carefully, measure twice, and always remember, the purpose of strong hands is to lift others up. With all my love forever, Papa. Ravi held the note to his chest and cried. The workshop expanded rapidly. Ravi sold his Mumbai apartment, using the money to buy adjacent properties and hire more instructors. Within a year, Arun's hands had trained over 50 children and placed them in apprenticeships across the city. News channels covered the story. Former banker builds hope. Son honors father's legacy by teaching underprivileged children. Ravi granted interviews reluctantly, always redirecting focus to the children's achievements. He started dating again too, meeting a social worker named Kavya who volunteered at the workshop on weekends. She understood his journey, his need for redemption through service. They would sit in the workshop after hours, planning curriculum improvements while the smell of fresh sawdust filled the air. Life had become simple, purposeful, infinitely richer than before. Sometimes Ravi talked to his father's photograph, updating him on everything. 2 years after that terrible dinner when Ravi called him useless, I visited my father's grave before dawn. The cemetery overlooked the sea he loved. I brought a wooden elephant I had carved myself, finally mastering the technique he tried teaching me as a child. I placed it on the headstone beside fresh flowers. I understand now, Papa, I said aloud. You didn't take my money to punish me. You removed my pride so I could finally see clearly. Behind me, Dinesh and the other children were arriving for our sunrise prayer session, a weekly ritual we had started. They carried their latest projects, eager to show me. The workshop had become something beyond my father's dream or my redemption. It was a living testament that broken things, including people, could be made whole again with patience and love. As the sun rose over the water, I thought about my father's last words. Build something that lasts. I finally had.